Then we move to our next speaker. I'm very excited to introduce Elihu Shannon, who is both an engineer and a scientist, but also a Sofer. Specialized in Masoretic studies, he has published books on multilingual studies and a prayer commentary. His presentation today will be why my script is different from my teachers. And Mr. Shannon, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I speak from Kibbutz Sa'ad near Gaza, my home in Israel. This evening in our Jewish calendar, the 27th of Nisan, is the date of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and now a day of remembering the Holocaust. I'm a scribe of Torah scrolls, which are written in Hebrew, according to hundreds of rules. I have written 21 Torah scrolls, 300,000 letters in each one, totaling over 6 million. May this be in their memory. Rules of the Torah scrolls govern the general layout, the exact type of parchment, how it has been worked, how it will be sewn together, and with what ink may be used, who may write, which hand may be used, what special intention the scribe has in his mind, and that he must read each word before writing it. Not only that, the distance between each letter, between each word, each paragraph, which sort of paragraph, the distance between the lines, and even how to score the lines, vertical and horizontal. By the way, we now computerize the scoring of the lines, a little bit of high-tech in my low-tech atmosphere. My scrolls are also checked using an OCR. So far, this is simple. Most scribes learn these rules quickly, and we buy the parchment ready for use. An old tradition was that the scribes used a cane for writing. When Jews reached Europe, there were no strong canes, and they began to write with quills. This changed the style of Ashkenazi scribes. The style also depends on the angle we cut the quill, and left-hand scribes have to cut it differently, and they usually write pulling the quill up from the bottom and towards the left. Cutting the quill each time may seem sometimes like a different scribe has begun to write. But the script itself, although varying from scribe to scribe, must obey other rules. Each letter has dozens of rules. And I ask you, somebody choose a letter, please. Anybody want to unmute and choose a letter?
Aleph.
Aleph, all right, it'll be Aleph. Let's see, there we are. We have a picture here to show different possibilities of different problems which may occur when writing an Aleph. Here's an Aleph where the right hand yod, it's called a yod, is been filled in. There's just a piece coming out of the side, rather than what's found in other Alephs. In this one, you can see a proper yod written on the top of the Aleph. Some letters have crowns too. If you can see this gimel, there's a gimel. Each one has a crown. There are quite a number of stories, midrashim, on the subject of letter forms. One of them tells the story of how Moses received the Torah and the angels didn't like it. Another story explains why there are sharp corners at various parts of the letters. But some of these are dependent on tradition. There's a difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardi writing, not only because they have different traditions, but also because the Ashkenazim have been using for many years quills, which are sharper than it is possible to write with an ordinary cane. Every scribe is expected to write exactly as his teacher has told him, but nobody is perfect, not even a scribe. There are dozens of books which are devoted entirely to discussing the correct form and the deviations which could make a whole Torah scroll invalid. Of course, we can correct most bad letters, but there are also uncorrectables. I didn't say incorrigible. You may have noticed. I mean the holy names of God, not just the tetragrammaton, but Adonai, Elohim, Shaddai, even shorter forms like El and Yah, and also Tzvaot and Ehyeh. These names need extra attention, kavanah, when writing them. For example, a scribe must say he is writing the name as a holy name, and such a name written in holy intention may not be deleted in any way. This means sometimes that a whole page might be put in the Geniza because it is not correctable. All these rules are for a Torah scroll read in the synagogue as part of the regular service each Shabbat. In ancient times, a scribe might write such a scroll just for study at home, so he would not have regarded the rules, and the scroll's value would be much less than one carefully written by the rules. We may now look at some examples. These are just letters. First, my own writing, which I will always recognize. I once saw a booklet, I'm showing it to you now, which was intended to encourage people to use the net and other electronic media for Torah study. And on the front of the booklet, a picture of a tablet, a modern tablet, displaying part of a Torah scroll. And I recognize there my own writing immediately. Since I have had a big website for over 20 years, it was natural for people to copy from it. Here is a mezuzah. I would like this a bit bigger, but unfortunately, just a second, I'll do it differently, perhaps. Oops, just a moment. I perhaps shouldn't have done. It's a PowerPoint. I'll do. It's not going to help me. Just a second. I have to get the PowerPoint back again.
No problem. No problem.
Sorry. Let's see. There we are. And it's a different sort of way of showing it, but it allows me to enlarge it as much as I like. Let's see. The idea is to show it as big as anybody can expect, even bigger if I need it. The page itself is 19 centimeters tall. The clarity of the picture allows me to point out some discerning features. Look at some specific letters and also the crowns. The crowns are almost always the same. The one on the line on the left the line in the middle is the longest. The one on the right is the shortest.
Sorry, I'm very sorry, but I don't believe you're sharing your screen at the moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for pointing it out. Oh dear. Let's see. I'm here. I'll just share the screen. Which is that? This one. That's not it. Where's the screen? The screen's disappeared somehow. Let's see. I'll have to do it again. There we are. There. Okay. Thank you. Here's the mezuzah. The page is 19 centimeters tall altogether. You're not seeing the whole lot. Now, if you look at the crowns, in the crown, the middle line is longest, the right-hand line is shortest. But if you look carefully, also, you'll see that the one on the left never comes out from the corner of the letter, but the one on the right usually does, or very nearly so. This is something that I've come to do, but it doesn't. There's no reason that it shouldn't be like that. At the top of the crown, there's usually a small dot. You can see these dots at the top of the crown. The idea is that the thorns the thorns. I call them the thorns. Look like the letter Zayin. The thorns of the letters Bedek Chaya. This is Bet, Daled, Kof, Yod, Het, Yod, Hey. All those, they come off on the left-hand side of the letter. The left of the bet, on the left of each letter, you can see the thorns. but you will not see that. Yeah, there happens to be there are thorns on other letters, but they don't matter so much. The yod, the kof, and a chet. Let's see the chet here. Here are the two thorns. When I was asked by one of the most eminent rabbis in the country to write him a Torah scroll, he said he was pleased that I put the thorn on the left of the letter. Why? Because other scribes put the thorn either in the middle of the letter or 2/3 towards the end. Chet has two thorns, I said, on the left, and they're joined by the right hand part by a sort of V-shaped, upside down V-shaped. On the right hand side, the top is rounded at the top on the right, making it like a vav. But here the leg comes out behind, or comes out from the middle of the top. Some scribes use their leg comes out on the right hand side, making it look like a vav altogether. The letter Ayin here is something I not just learned, I received from my teacher. He insisted that the right part was absolutely straight. You look at the straightness of this Ayin. Most people, or should I say, it's not just most, it's practically everybody, writes the Ayin in a sort of curved way. But I haven't seen other people do it the same way as myself. I am particularly careful about many things, about two things other people fail to do. I space my letters carefully so that you can always see a gap between letters. And I also space between the words carefully so that it's not too much and not too little. And I also plan my lines so that I don't have to stretch. I don't have to stretch letters at the end of the line. Many Sofrim, when they write, when they get to the end of the line, they have a problem. They have too much. They've left too much space, and so they stretch one of the letters. This is often done with certain letters. With other letters, it's forbidden. Now I shall compare my writing with the writing of one of the world's best-known experts. He died a couple of years ago, Menachem Davidovich. Many Sofrim copy from his, what they call a tikkun. They copy from his writing, and they also try to write like him too. Now, note at the bottom. Note for his excuse me, I've never managed to move what moves these things before. Oh, there we are. Notice that the thorns of Bedek Chaya, have a look at the hay, for instance, here. It's not at the end of the hay, it's just a little before. Here again, look at here. Dalad, notice it's not at the end, it's just a 0.5 millimeter or less from the end, but this is on purpose. The chet is on that corner, and the yod, it's on the left too. But the other letters, it's not so. Also, the ayin is curved. If you look at the ayin here, curved, well curved, with a slight bend quite often in the middle. No, I don't think. Yes, just here is in Hoot. There is a slight bend in the ayin towards the bottom. Also, the style of other letters, the left vertical line of shin, and here. Shin and Yod, Shin, Ayin, Sadi, Tet, it doesn't come down from the middle of the square at the top. It comes down from the right. If you look at the Ayin, the line comes down from the side, on the right side. As different from for me, it's always in the middle. The right hand of the tzadi also differs. You have a tzadi here. It doesn't look like a yod. It looks like a yod, a mirror image of a yod. Some of his letters are also almost touching each other. it's this particular example isn't he's done better, but sometimes it looks almost as if they're going to touch. They're certainly much closer than with my letters. Vav has a thorn. Let's see, it's a Vav. Here was a Vav on the top left. Chet has only one thorn on the left. This and other differences reflect different opinions. I must stress that all these differences do not invalidate the writing. Both his and mine are considered very good by all standards for Ashkenazi writing. Sephardi writing and other subdivisions will also be different. Questions are welcome from anybody. No doubt some of you may not be answered in the allotted time, so I would like to add my email at the bottom, and also my website if you want to see it. And anybody who wants to contact me, and also I can pass on questions to an internet forum of scribes and other experts. I know some people who deal with renovating ancient old scrolls, we say. I won't say ancient, old scrolls that were brought from abroad from defunct Jewish communities. You're invited to keep in touch, and anybody who contact me, and when you feel anybody in Israel also can come to me, I'll be pleased to see you. Last, I wish to thank you all for the opportunity to join your group for the last few days. I have enjoyed it very much, and I wish you many more years of research along with the blessings needed today for good health.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Are there any questions for Elihu? If not, then I would like to turn to a couple of questions for Estara. James. James has a question. James, could you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you. This was an excellent learning moment. On the strokes that the hanging line there, as the strokes move from left to right, we have a little bit of a profile of the nib of your pen. Are there any conventions with regard to shaping the nib that are standardized, or are these personal preferences?
Very personal. There are lots of different ways of shaping the nib. First of all, most nibs have always been originally they were just cuts. They used a sharp knife to make a slit in the middle of a cane, and the sides of the cane they used to shape as according to the amount of ink they wanted to be inside the nib itself. Now, when they started using quills, and today they even use there's even have plastic ready-made plastic nibs. I once tried one, but I didn't like it, so I gave it to somebody else. Afterwards, somebody said to me that for my writing, for my level of writing, I don't really need a plastic nib. Plastic nibs are really for people who press too hard on the cloth, on the parchment, so they eventually need to renew the nib quite a lot. I can write a whole page, 40 lines sometimes, without needing to sharpen my nib at all.
But you do have to sharpen every 40 lines or so, and that will.
Not necessarily. It might be. I might need to sharpen it more in the middle. There's another thing. Some people like to make a madriga, what do you call that? A step in the middle. So half of the nib is a bit shorter than the other half, and that means when they press, first of all, it creates a different sort of edge to the, it's a sort of a decorative way of doing it. Some decorations are good and they look nice too. I never claim that my writing is the best at all. It may be clear, and the people who read from the Torah like my writing usually. But there's some Sofrim, I think Estara mentioned decorative people, decorative writing. It's true that I agree with her that some people who don't know how to write too well, they try to fill in the gap of the writing by decorating their the top of the letters or something. Yes.
Toda rabah.
Yes. Anybody else? There are in the chat.
The next question is from Gemma.
Gemma, yes.
Thank you very much for your talk. Sorry, I need to, can you hear me?
Just about.
Sorry, it's a shared room. Thank you very much for your talk. It was a lovely addition to our conference, and we're very glad that you could be here as well. I have two quick questions. Do you have the same problem with terminology in your field as well? I noticed that you were using words like crown and horn, and I'm just wondering whether you have the same debates as we have in academia about terminology. And then my second question, you were mentioning how certain scribes try to emulate each other and each other's handwriting. So what do you think about our proposal of a scribe many, many years ago, and these two scribes emulating each other in the Isaiah scroll, in the great Isaiah scroll?
I never managed to copy the writing of my own teacher. It's a question of being able to. I'm not so. I was never artistically inclined at all. I received. It was in England. I received a mark at the end of the year for art of 0 out of 100. And that's in spite of doing all the drawings. And here, this is my profession today. I'm work as an artist in a way, but I don't really see this just as an artist. I'm a calligrapher, which is not quite the same. I can't claim that I am a good copier. I don't usually try either all that much. I have my own way of writing. It may be slightly different, not on purpose, from my teacher, but it doesn't matter. It's good. It's considered all right.
Sorry,
the other question about terminology.
Sorry.
I can't say that there is different terminology. There would be probably if in Hebrew, yes. I don't usually use any. I never talk in English about scribes. It's all done in Hebrew, and all the study is in Hebrew too. I probably in different countries, in different areas, and perhaps in different books too. They must use different terms. It's a general problem, isn't it? It's not just scribes or anybody particular. In every profession, it's yes.
Sorry, can I just have one follow-up?
Yeah.
Did I hear you wrong then when I heard you say that there was an emulating that happened, like a copying?
I think many people try to copy Davidovich. First of all, because his first of all his writing is beautiful. Second, he's not just a good writing, and you can see how he writes on YouTube, I think, today. And there also you can get lessons on YouTube. I can find them. If somebody writes to me, I'll send them how to find lessons on YouTube. the extra thing about Davidovich is that he too does not stretch his letters unnecessarily. Only in Shirat Hayam, Shirat Hazinu, it's obvious that he's stretching letters, and that's something I don't do in these parts of the Torah. That's not so often, but I've asked rabbis, and they've agreed that I'm certainly doing the right thing. Yes. Somebody asked me to read the chat. Okay.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions from Daniel Stokop and Ezra for you.
Yeah, okay.
How long do you need to study? And then also how many columns you can write per day, and how often you need to re-ink?
Re-ink, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. To study, I have a nephew who studied himself, learning all the rules. And after doing that, he came to me he was in Kiryat Shmona, that's in the far north of Israel. He came to me for about 10 days or 2 weeks or something. He sat next to me and he started writing, and he tried to write, and I showed him and explained to him everything. And after those 10 days, he was already writing fairly, but he was much more artistic than me. He's now an architect. That's not question one. To study the halachot, all the rules, it takes a lot of doing, because the rules are also so scattered all over the whole of the Shas, the whole of the 6 orders, the Mishnah and Gemara, inside the Gemara, scattered. The rules are literally scattered. They're not easy to find. On my website, I've put in an extra way of helping these people. I've put in a page which asks you what you want to study, and you just press on the link, and you see a page of the Gemara, the Talmud, the relevant page. How many columns can you write a day? A Sephardi can write about twice as much as an Ashkenazi, because the writing is less ornate. To re-ink, wait, I didn't say how many columns. I can write a bit more than a column a day. In my once upon a time, when I was writing fast, I could write a column and a half occasionally. Usually it was about 6 hours of writing for one column. All right, but this is quite slow. Most scribes are a bit faster than me. I'm more careful, perhaps. I claim to be. That's not for me to decide. How often do you have to add ink? I dip my quill about twice in every row. Sometimes I can write a whole row with a quill. I have a friend in Jerusalem. He showed me his quill, which was made specially to contain an extra lot of ink, and he can write more than one line, or even 2 lines perhaps, without dipping it into the ink. Right?
Thank you so much, Elihu.
Sorry?
Thank you so much, Elihu.
Yeah.
Then, if you don't mind, I would like to turn to the discussion.
Okay.
The general discussion.
Thank you too.
And I would like to start, if that's okay, for a couple of more questions to Estara, if you're ready. And yes. Our first one is from Sarah Yardney. Okay. If you could, yes.
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for your paper. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
So you mentioned a number of texts that you thought were written by children. Can you say more about how you identify the writers as children and not simply as unskilled adult writers?
Yes, so we have for, also, if you're familiar with the article by Judith Elzoe Schlanger on children's copy Bibles, the title it's on my PowerPoint. Title eludes me at the moment, but there are a number of Bibles in the Taylor Schechter collections here in Cambridge, where you have on one side you have skilled scribal writing, on the other side you have, you know, practice writing, and it was done by a child in school learning to just to write. Also, I mean, it's a bit of inference. I am maybe a bit subjective in saying the worse the handwriting is and the less formatting in the codicology. So for example, if it's on exactly a scrap of paper, it's probably done by a child. I also have found like writing where the child gets bored and starts doodling. I found doodles in the margins and such, so that and so, I mean, it is a bit of an inference. I did have one, I wish I had time to show you all, where the author tries to write little dummy Masoretic notes, like little pretend Masoretic notes in the margins. And I'm unsure whether it's a child or an adult. It may be a child in Scribal school learning how to format, but that's all uncertain. I will say that I tend to feel, this is my subjectiveness, I tend to feel that the less quality, the younger, but obviously that's impossible to say. That's why I don't say children's writing, I say unprofessional. I can say someone has done in the Q&A, Bronson has said something in the Q&A.
Oh, yes, I suggest we turn to Bronson next. First, we have a question from Nadia.
Oh, okay.
That's okay, yes.
Nadia, you're muted. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
At some point, you didn't show this fragment, but you mentioned that somebody was writing in unprofessional Hebrew and then towards the ends of line changed into more fluent Arabic script.
Yes, I can try to pull that up really quickly.
So my question is, do you assume that this person or Jews in general were more fluent in Arabic script? How do you explain this situation on the whole? This question came to my mind already when Judith spoke and said that graphic sort of movement trained in Arabic influence how you write Hebrew, but this seems to presuppose that your writing in Arabic is more fluent and more natural to you than writing in Hebrew, which is the complete opposite of what we normally say about medieval Jews.
Yes, that's a very good question. And I want to pull up, actually, I have my thesis, I can pull it up for you. If I can share my screen, I will happily
Sure, go ahead.
So here is from my thesis. You can see he's writing in Berakia at the end. He's just immediately gotten tired and got into, and you can see the Arabic script. It's a bit more fluid of a cursive line, and I mean his Hebrew is actually not that bad. It's actually quite it's the lack of formatting which makes it so terrible. It's not that the letter shapes themselves are quite well done, and it's the only time it happens in the manuscript, but it's just very interesting that it occurs. And my hypothesis is that he grew tired at the end of the line and just wanted to write this Yod Ayin ligature, and then that's what he did. But as for your question as to whether it's easier to write in Arabic, I'm torn on this. I mean, there is a debate that cursive script is easier because it's less strain on the hand to write in. When you write in block letters and with right angles, it's harder. I think Colette Sugat says that somewhere, that it's harder to write like right angles. Your hand is more tense, and cursive is easier. I've studied Arabic, and I find that writing in Arabic script is more difficult for me than writing in Hebrew script. I'm not certain. I'm wondering if it's certain people who were in Scribal school needed training to write in Arabic script, had more training to write in Arabic script than Hebrew script, because perhaps they were going to go into some kind of profession where they needed to write Arabic documents. That's my, that is my idea. Someone says, might the Arabic more compact to fit in at the line end? If you look at the whole manuscript, there's no formatting whatsoever. So I mean, it's an idea. I thought about that actually, but I don't think it's not a formatting tool. Did I answer your question, Nadia?
so you're not suggesting that Jews were found it easier to write in Arabic. So when they got tired, they switched from, because that's what surprised me, that somebody.
No, I'm not suggesting that universally. I'm suggesting it's a possibility for this writer, but it may not. It's just strange. Why would you suddenly write at the end of the line? I mean, maybe it's easier for it's only one line. So yeah, I'm unsure.
Can I ask one more?
Sure, go ahead.
Quickly. At some point, I thought you also talked about people being uneducated and writing those sort of untrained, unprofessional hands. But if you look not only at the Bibles, look at other manuscripts in the Geniza, sometimes you find those unprofessional hands in highly intellectual contexts. While alchemy can be thought of as an intellectual, educated, alchemists are educated. You sometimes, I know of a very, very funny transcription of the Quran into Judeo-Arabic in very sort of unprofessional script. Obviously, this is not somebody totally uneducated, interested in the Quran. So I was wondering if adding other areas to the Bible, sort of, if looking not just at the biblical manuscripts, but at manuscripts in those let's say non-professional, like this question in the Q&A. If looking at those non-professional hands in other areas can modify the perspective that non-professional writing is uneducated writer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think maybe non-educated isn't the right term. Maybe basically educated or fundamental. They have enough education to interact with these texts, or maybe the reading level is higher than their writing ability, for example.
That's surprising.
But one of my hope for this paper that I'm publishing is that I've started with Bible texts because that was my thesis, but it applies to other areas and it should be extended to other texts. There's so much non-scribal writing, let's say, or in the Geniza that has been like not paid attention to, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that discussion. We did indeed have a few questions in the Q&A from Bronson. Bronson, if you would like to ask them yourself.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for this lovely session and lovely papers. I had a few questions for you, Estar, and you can answer them all or answer what you will. It's up to you. But one of them was, do you have any comparisons of these scripts to graffiti? And I'm thinking of, this graffiti from Pompeii, which I know a little bit and enjoy, and it has, educated people are writing that, but the stuff they're talking about is really racy, shall we say, and maybe low, by our standards, low bar. So I just had a question about that, of comparison to graffiti, and I am totally ignorant of Hebrew graffiti in your period. Second question was about using the term non-professional instead of unprofessional, in the sense of unprofessional has all sorts of connotations of, I don't know, maybe not suitable for certain contexts and things like this. And if you use the term non-professional, this is again my nitpick of the day here, it allows you to do things like you can have a very educated scribe who can write beautiful Torah scrolls, but maybe in another context that is not their professional usage of their script, they might write quite differently than they would when they write a Torah scroll. And Elihu could probably comment to that as well. The other one was, you always said he for the scribes. Do we have any females? I'm just curious, I don't know. And then, were there any Bible passages that occurred more than any others? And if you give me one more second, one little comment on the first scribe that you showed, the first text, that person certainly writes Hebrew better than me. And I like to think of myself as rather educated. I might be wrong about that. But one little point was, in those couple of lines that you showed, the first and I think the second one had no lameds in it. And the third one had a lamed where he made a mistake and made this little tiny lamed. In all the other ones, it seemed like the lamed, the mast of the lamed was setting the heights of those lines. So I just didn't know, just a comment, maybe that has something to do with the planning that this person did for those couple lines. Thank you very much. I learned a lot.
thank you for all of these questions. I feel a bit embarrassed that I'm getting all these questions, but I will do my best. First, I will say, actually, if you don't mind in this article, if I can thank you for convincing me that non-professional is a better term. I actually agree with you now that you have pointed it out. I think the only thing I will say is that there's a difference between informal writing done by a trained scribe and informal writing done by someone who's not a trained scribe. And that's what I mean by not professional. But I think non-professional is better. I don't know about graffiti in my period. And that's not my area. I would have to defer to someone who is an expert. I don't want to say because I don't know. Do we have female scribes or only male? We do have some, and that article by Judith Alzois-Slanger shows that there is some evidence that we have women writers in the Geniza. It's not as common. I use he just as maybe I shouldn't, as just a broad designator, but it's more common to have he, obviously. Are there any Bible passages that occur much more commonly? It depends on the type of common Bible. For children's Bibles, Leviticus is obviously because they would start their education with Leviticus. But it's not always Leviticus. So I think that is, I think I answered all of your questions. So thank you.
Wonderful. Then we have one last question for Elihu from Drew.
All right, I'm listening.
Yes, Elihu, thank you. It was great to see you finally and to hear the presentation. Beautiful handwriting, I agree. Thank you for showing us. As a paleographer, I'm always curious about what your scribal experience has to tell us. And I'm curious if you could speak to similarities and dissimilarities with ancient handwriting situations. In particular, I see that you have a very artistic script and it's a really slow process. I'm wondering, how does that compare with actual handwriting in the sense of fluent writing instead of just kind of this beautiful artistic thing?
I can't see the connection really. To be honest, over the last 30 years since I started writing, my ordinary writing has gone down quite a lot. I used to write quite nicely in Hebrew. Perhaps what did I say? I really learnt to write properly in Hebrew only when I was about 18. I came to Israel and found that I saw people's writing, other people's writing, and my own was rather a terrible scrawl. And I saw other writing, mainly girls' writing. So it is a feminine thing apparently. And their writing, I thought it was so beautiful. I thought I want writing like that. And I started practicing myself. And within a year, I'd more or less managed to get quite good writing. But after the last 30 years, I say it's gone down a lot. And I tend to scroll because perhaps because I'm not writing on a proper table, and that's part of it too. There is quite a lot to be said for the right environment of writing. I don't mean environment, the distant environment, the close environment, exactly what you're writing on, where you keep your tools, and if they're nearby and you don't have to get up each time, and the sitting position. I myself use what they call a knee rest. Well, it's quite a lot of computer users use knee rests too, and I sit upright rather than low down like a lot of other scribes. I think this position is also changing over the time. And scribes are learning to learn in a better, shall we say, there's a special word for it, I don't remember what it is, in a better position for their back, and they don't have to worry too much about something hurting them too. Writing, connection between your writing and connection, your writing a scroll, I really can't see the connection, because if I can write properly, I do. And but if I just have a piece of paper in my hand and I want to write on it, then I tend to scroll, I'm afraid. It's not very good, I know. My English writing has gone down too. When I write in English or Russian or something like that, and it's also a scroll. I don't, I'm very careless, unfortunately.
Thank you
Have I
very
an-
much. I have a look at the time, and we should probably round off here. But thank you very, very much to all three of you, Nadia, Stara, Elihu, for a wonderful session. I have learned a lot. Now it's time for a break for 45 minutes before we turn to our final discussions of this conference. And I hope to see you all then in 45 minutes. And thank you so much for coming again.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.